and welcome to my second critical reflection vlog. I'm wearing the same shirt as in the last video, but it is a different day. And yeah, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. So I wanted to go ahead and basically talk about the concept of this vlog. I'm going to be talking about homogeny and gentrification, and specifically the effects of those two concepts on the LGBTQ plus community. So first, what is homogeny? Homogeny is a variant form of homogeneity, which basically means the quality or state of being all the same or all of the same kind. Basically, when you hear the word homogeny, you can think of synonyms like uniformity, conformity, sameness, that sort of thing. And before we dive into the idea of homogeny and how it negatively affects people and also specifically LGBTQ plus people, I'm going to go ahead and also explain and kind of touch on the term gentrification. One definition of gentrification is the process of renovating and improving a house or district so that it conforms to middle-class taste. It is also a phenomenon of affluent people moving to less wealthy neighborhoods. Both gentrification and homogeny deal with the concept of whiteness, and also in turn deal with the idea of straightness, because that is typically homogenized with whiteness. When you look at gentrified areas, you can typically tell because people of color and people of LGBTQ plus identity are pushed to the side so that more affluent, white people feel more at home and homogenized within that community. Now that we've identified both of these concepts, I want to go into how these affect LGBTQ plus people. I'm going to be talking about 3 different videos. The first is an interview with Penny Arcade and Sarah Schulman called Gentrification of the Mind. The second is a movie called A Jihad for Love. And the third is a YouTube web series called Queer Amsterdam. While each of these videos display a different angle or struggle which faces LGBTQ plus people, specifically in location and ability to express themselves and laws which affect that ability, they also all allude to the greater concept of how homogeneity can create further struggle. 2 minutes into the video, Sarah Schulman begins discussing the concept of white flight, which is basically when, after World War II, racist suburbs attracted whites to move away from the city. In the suburbs, houses were privatized and expensive. Women were re-domesticated after entering the workforce during World War II. And you get car culture, all of these concepts of whiteness, that sort of thing. However, in the city, apartment-style living was cheaper, more social, and you started to see this growth of revolutionary movements like gay liberation, black power, etc. 3 minutes in, she talks about how in the 70s, a broke city was arguing that because the tax base was so low from white flight, they were going broke. And the argument was to encourage wealthy people to come back to the city. And through municipal policy choices, New York stopped funding low-income housing and caused tax cuts to luxury housing developers. And basically the idea was aimed at getting at the children of white flight. This culture created gated communities and reintroduced homogeneity into New York. Through looking at this interview with Sarah Schulman and Penny Arcade, we can see how the homogeneity and the space of homogeny in general in New York is different from that of the other videos. We see that in New York, homogeneity means that instead of the traditional sense of gentrification, where yuppies come in and kick out old businesses and start new ones, we see instead a non-restriction on commercial businesses and their pricing, meaning that what you're seeing more of is chains. What Sarah Schulman and Penny Arcade point out is that what used to be great about New York, about people having open ideas, new art was created, people were forced to see people who were different from them. And as New York has become more and more homogenized, it becomes a place where white culture is familiar and accepted, and people of LGBTQ plus communities and people of color are pushed out. And when they talk about gentrification of the mind, specifically what they mean is that through gentrifying an area and creating a homogenized society, you also cause people to close their minds and believe that there aren't as many alternatives as there really are. They use the example of artists and how many believe now that you have to go to school to get a degree in art, or that to be a performance artist you have to have a PhD. Kind of these concepts of only one way in order to make it in New York, so to speak. And because of that, what you're seeing is these elitist, homogenized art pieces instead of the ground of New York, which tended to be people who were on the outside. This concept of gentrification of the mind is a perfect segue into the next thing that I'm going to be talking about, which is the movie A Jihad for Love. In A Jihad for Love, we see the stories of multiple people who are of the LGBTQA plus community and their struggle to combine Islam and their Muslim roots with their sexuality. And speaking about gentrification of the mind, it's important to note that because of the religious roots and because of Islam and its importance in their area, it basically becomes impossible for these people to identify and be themselves, as laws including